access, increase market access, provide capital and other forms of support to the female ecosystem. One element, at least, that the research has shown in all of this is partnership, and specifically partnerships between fintechs, banks, women-focused organizations, and other institutions that can really help unlock better propositions, not just for this emerging market, but to also reach and have access to this market. So really excited about the conversation today. My name is Topsy Kola-Yenei. I'm a partner at McKinsey & Company, and I'm excited to have a distinguished panel with me today to share their perspective on this topic. Ajaita Shah, CEO of Frontier Markets, Steve Landman, CEO of Keel Global, and Manish Diwan, CEO of Apex. So get started probably with Steve, right? Steve, as CEO of Keel Global, I mean, literally, you could probably tell us a lot about partnerships, given that your Keel Global talks about digital bridges and building that connection. Your organization serves over thousands of women across Vietnam and other parts of Asia. Can you share with us a little bit what has been the role of partnerships in serving these women, and also what has been the impact so far?
Sure, thanks so much, and good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everyone. Yeah, partnerships are vital. I mean, we could obviously never do it alone, and so when we talk about partnerships, about addressing the financial needs of women and women-owned businesses in Southeast Asia, we look at the associations first, because we need to be able to get to scale. So organizations like the Miramar Women's Entrepreneur Association or the Da Nang Entrepreneurs Association. So that allows us access to the women-owned SMEs and MSMEs. The second pillar for partnership would be the financial institutions. So in every country we work, we have at least one bank or financial institution that partners with us to enable us to do lending to the SMEs. But the last one, and I think is really an important one, are actually the development banks. So Asian Development Bank and the World Bank, for instance, and even development organizations like USAID support us in a lot of the initiatives. But the reality is that a lot of the financial institutions are very risk adverse. So it's great to be able to come in with organizations like Asian Development Bank or World Bank to support lending with the financial institutions, either loan guarantees or providing capital to those banks. So it de-risks it a little bit.
Thanks a lot, Steve. So basically the role of development banks, very critical in reaching this market. Can you share with us a little bit about the impact? What has been the impact in serving sort of the female economy, right? What is the secret that you wish people knew about, serving this segment?
Yeah, so I think the biggest secret is that we should be lending more to women, because they actually, in almost every case, they're managing the finances for the family and for the organization that they're running. I think that the other really important secret is that we find that women entrepreneurs really embrace technology, where the men don't so much. And so it allows us to really help them create more efficient, productive businesses. But again, more importantly, it allows them to access finance rather quickly. So it's nice to see that kind of adoption in technology from the women, actually.
Thanks, Steve. Very, very interesting. Ajaita, your organization serves thousands of women in India, a wide range of different types of products. Why the focus on women? Why did you choose to focus on women? And for you, what has been the role of partnerships, not just in serving them, but also determining sort of the propositions to share or to provide these women?
Sure, thank you so much for that. And again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. It's evening on my side of the woods in India. So I've spent the last 15 years working with rural entrepreneur creation, financial inclusion for women in India through microfinance, and then through my venture now, Frontier Markets, where we've been partnering with the National Rural Livelihood Mission self-help group initiatives, the women collectives in India, to recruit rural women to become our entrepreneurs, to become the facilitator of services to their rural customers, leveraging an assisted e-commerce platform that was designed for them called the Meri Saheli app. Now, the perspective here is that there's 65 million women that are part of the self-help group initiative today in India. And these are women that have been pretty much left behind when it comes to financial inclusion, digital services, and also sustainable income opportunities. at a large scale, because these customers live in very remote rural areas where they're not necessarily connected to local banks, and they're not connected to local digital solutions. In the last couple of years, that's changed though, right? And with India kind of investing in digital inclusion, investing in bank accounts, investing in Aadhaar-enabled ID, there's a huge opportunity to really leverage these women entrepreneurs to drive access to services for financial inclusion in a very different way. And that's exactly what we've done, right? 10,000 women entrepreneurs of ours pretty much have access to easily 100 households, where we're talking about 70% of them being women customers. And they're able to leverage that data to get insights around how to better curate products that would be essential and relevant to that customer. So this uniquely allows us to think about data differently, and also allows us to think about partnerships then differently. In the last couple of years, we've not just partnered with consumer durable companies and digital appliances, et cetera, but we've also with fintech companies. There's hundreds of fintech companies today in India that are looking to serve this market, almost 551 million customers. The key here is to leverage alternative data to come up with better credit understandings of rural customers. So not just their assets, but also their transactions, and also thinking about their purchases, as well as also shaping products at a lower cost for delivery at a higher value. So we've done launches with fintech companies to introduce digital savings products that are pretty much designed for women for helping their purchase decisions. So not just for education savings, but also like people want to buy stuff for weddings, they want to buy things for holidays, and how do you kind of save for that with better interest rates? 0% EMI loans on durables, because we know that if you can give them less interest rates, they can make payments faster and on time at a lower cost. We've also introduced COVID-related digital insurance programs that help women not just cover their insurance for COVID-related work, but also the days that they're not able to work. How do they get cash back? So there's a lot of innovative opportunities to design for rural customers. We see ourselves as a link, because fintech companies have done their job partnering with government to be compliant friendly and actually enable things like Aadhaar to use for services, and also have the right legal structuring. But what they need is a physical connect to the rural customers, which is where I think leveraging women entrepreneurs to do that works. Today, we have 700,000 rural customers with 10,000 women entrepreneurs, and that's very scalable given that market size, and a unique opportunity for innovative gender-centric partnerships for inclusion. Thanks.
No, very exciting. Very exciting. Maybe a question, just a quick follow-up question on that, right? How did that journey start? What you said about sort of having that last mile access is very important, but how do you start that sort of journey? If you're someone looking to sort of create that similar model to serve the female economy, how do you start? How do you get started?
Well, I think first we need to come up with a philosophy that all of us need to embrace, right? So one is that rural households should not be looked at as poor beneficiaries, but recognizing that when they have access to any sort of income streams, they're a dignified customer. So you design for them, right, as a first and foremost important solution. And recognize that they're not different from any other customer. They want local services, they want reliant services, and they want it for value for money. I think the second thing is that we look at women differently. We don't look at women as a short-term impact story, but also look at it as smart business. That women are really crucial when it comes to delivering services, because they can enter into any rural customer's house, collect data that's a lot more robust, and give more fundamental insights that allows us to co-create differently. What they miss is skilling and access to digital tools, which we can now bridge quite easily by investing in those smartphones and investing in that technology to cater to them. But let's look at this with a lens of equity versus debt. So we're not judging what they're doing instantly, but actually looking at the CLV that you're able to create. Because once a rural woman has entered into that household for that customer, you're getting so much data that allows you to think about cross-sell, upsell, resell in a very different way that creates a lucrative brand equity opportunity. For advice to people that want to replicate this similarly, I think the key, again, as Steve mentioned, is partnerships. But the partnerships here is slightly different, right? We're talking about understanding that in most countries, there are women collectives, there are nonprofits, there are grassroots community organizations that have built robust infrastructure to reach out to these rural households. We need to create a win-win incentive for them to join. So what we've done is we've now pretty much onboarded NGOs, and we pay them to give us access to their data, give us access to their networks, and allow them to onboard those rural Salees for us. And on top of that, the uptake of everything that you sell, if you share a margin, that's sustained income for them. Also, let's remember, there's a clear impact win-win story over here, because the rural households that they care about, we care about as well. And we're able to create impact value opportunities and economic empowerment that aligns with not just the grassroots communities, but also on a policy level for our governments. And this is where I think gender, livelihoods, economic empowerment, if we come in with a market-based lens and understand how to create a win-win opportunity of collaboration, we can do this at a larger scale, at a lower cost, with a lot more deeper outcomes of true equitable sustainability at scale.
And thanks a lot for sharing that, Ajayita. I think there's a lot emerging here around partnerships, around innovation, around mindset orientation, and even thinking about existing tools that we can use differently, leveraging digital. We'd love to spin it over to Manish. Manish, your platform essentially enables innovation to happen, right? Bringing together basically financial institutions and fintechs and enabling them to innovate and serve the sort of entire Asian region. Tell us a bit about what have you seen about financial institutions and fintechs coming together to create products targeting the female economy? What are the bottlenecks and how can Apex help unlock it? Manish, I think you're on mute.
Yep. Thanks. Thanks for that, Topsy. And hello, everyone. So Apex as a platform is fairly new at what we are doing right now. It's fairly greenfield. So we've been around for almost 2 years now, but the actual real product that we see today is live since 2019 December 2019 Singapore FinTech Festival last year. What we see around is that while innovation collaboration is a very in term these days, everybody talks about it, and their innovation leads in banks and whatnot. The fact of the matter is that innovation per se is a fairly long, tedious journey, and it costs a lot of money, which is the bridge that we are trying to gap now, to come out and explain it to large banks, small banks, big banks, medium-sized banks and insurance companies and whatnot, that you can actually come on board Apex or any platform like Apex and work with a fintech, create a prototype for a fancy new service that you want to launch in a matter of a couple of weeks. Doesn't really come around a lot of people as yet. But the fact is that we have actually got it down from 6, 8, 10 months to 6, 8, 10 days, literally. So we ourselves are in a formative stage right now. But what we have absolutely definitely seen is that those who have actually cracked this whole puzzle around the paradigm shift around that I need to have 10 months of time period to do one POC versus I can now do it in 10 days, have really taken the battle on. And now I have financial institutions, large financial institutions, who are actually coming on board and saying, any department in my whole institution has anything to do with innovation, they first go to Apex to test and try and check. While there's a humongously large population of banks and institutions who are still saying, I have this one problem to solve. I'm sorry, you don't really have one problem to solve. Every department in your bank has at least 3 problems to solve. You've just never bothered to see it like that. And why we have not bothered to see it like that is simply because it didn't make business sense to do it. Well, for right or wrong reasons, everything has to be related to one Excel sheet somewhere, which is fine. But sometimes it is because somebody has to wait at your branch for an hour before an account is opened, or somebody has to wait at some loan center somewhere to pay for an EMI for 30 minutes. That's also wastage, right? But probably it didn't make business sense. I mean, everybody to himself. But we are trying to bridge that gap. It's a long, tiring journey. We are on it. We have fantastic people on our board like MAS, AIFC, and Mastercard, and AMTD, and ASEAN Bankers Association supporting us, and and we are trying to do our best to help bridge this whole scheme of things. So yeah, we'll get there sooner or later. Yep.
Thanks a lot for sharing that, Manish. Thank you. So when we think about what's happening based on what we're talking about in terms of partnerships and sort of collaboration, where do we start? Where do we start in terms of creating transparency on the opportunity with the female economy? Because it sounds, if I take off what Manish said, there's something around, it doesn't make business sense, or I'm not aware that it makes business sense. Steve, could you share a bit about what you've seen with at least the financial institutions that you've partnered with? How did you create the transparency on the win-win on the business opportunity side?
Right, again, it goes back to being development bank initiatives. And so here in Vietnam, for instance, we work with the largest bank, BIDV, and in conjunction with Asian Development Bank. So this is a big focus to enable access to finance for the women-owned businesses. So they brought a lot of money to BIDV and loan guarantees and technical assistance money. And it's finally encouraging banks like BIDV to start loosening up their risk policies a little bit. But again, it's still very challenging. 58% of SMEs are rejected for loans by banks in Vietnam, and women are at 74%. So, and farmers are even higher. So we have a long way to go. But again, I really believe that the development banks and agencies are a big catalyst to have it move forward faster and more efficiently.
Thanks, Steve. And Ajaita, who else would you say is critical, right? So I think in Steve's experience, it's not been the financial institutions, the development banks have led, and then others sort of followed suit. In your experience, what is that one core partner you need to get on board that sort of crowds in the rest?
So I think for a lot of my fintech colleagues, they've definitely worked more closely with investors and more private sector capital to bring in their business opportunities, because they've been able to prove high transactions at a low cost to many customers at a larger volume. And I think that going back to the point that Steve mentioned, again, women are better at managing capital, and they're actually more disciplined when it comes to repayments. And we've learned this forever through our microfinance days. I think the key over here has been about why the investors have been playing a more interesting role today than they did before, is because they're no longer looking at it just with a debt lens. They are actually also looking at it with an equity lens, because now you have an asset called technology and data that is actually allowing you to think about, exponential returns of what to do with those assets at a much larger scale at a lower cost. And I think this is where it's become quite instrumental. So we also, are funded 100% by equity capital. We're not funded by debt. And to Steve's point and others, it's been very difficult as a woman entrepreneur. I guess I'm not an MSME. I guess I'm an MSME. And it's been very difficult for even me to get debt capital, because as a promoter, I don't have, my own financial securities to be able to put against a loan. And I think that until banks and other institutions don't think differently about collateral and think differently about opportunity, we're not going to be able to lean on them. We're going to lean more towards blended capital, towards equity, towards mezzanine financing with grant funding, and then the DFIs. And I think that's definitely been a huge core for us as well as we've been scaling up.
Thanks, Ajaita. Thanks for sharing that. I'd love to open it up to participants in the breakout to ask questions, share comments. You could either, I'm happy to unmute, or you could type your comment in the chat box. Questions, comments? Okay, I see a question. Okay. I see a question coming in from Manish. Manish, could you explain a bit more about what Apex is, live data, sort of in the layman terms? How does this whole exchange and platform work?
Sure. So Apex by definition is an experimentation platform. It spells as API X, so which is Apex API Exchange. So we have a global fintech marketplace. Currently, we host close to about 350 to about 400 fintechs on it, and about 2,000 plus in our database. We expect all these fintechs as much as possible to showcase their APIs. On the Apex platform, we have an API catalog as well. So that is part two of what we provide. We have a global fintech marketplace, an API catalog, and the third part of it is the API testing facility that we provide on the platform for financial institutions or anybody else who's interested to test and try these APIs to quickly be able to run these tests and understand whether this fulfills their requirements prima facie or not. Okay, because the actual POC may take a lot more customizations, etc., but prima facie it should be there thereabouts. That is the third part. And the fourth and the most critical part of what we provide, which is like the heart of Apex platform, is the sandbox, the IDE, integrated development environment. This essentially takes care of all your infrastructure need as a financial institution ever that you had to go and plead your CTO to allow you to create one and pay for it because you wanted to run a POC. Apex provides that solution out of box on cloud. You simply have to link any of the APIs that you liked. It automatically features in your IDE environment, and you can quickly go ahead and start creating proof of concepts around it. What we also provide is the fifth and the second most critical item is the synthetic data. So Apex provides almost 3 million rows of synthetic data out of box, plus what we call as a smart bank API, which essentially replicate a core banking system for you to run two types of experiments. One, static data experiment, or two, where you have some sort of interest generation capacity or anything else that you need, which will need to interact with a core banking system to replicate. So these five essentially is what Apex is. And besides that, the sixth critical part that we have is the Apex community, which is essentially two types. One, Apex internal member community for all members to come and interact. And then which is the larger, which is the open community for anybody who has any interest in technology. You could be an academician, you could be a engineering school grad, or you could be any one of us on this call today. So this whole piece put together is what Apex is. And the original genesis of Apex was to reach out to banks and financial institutions who don't really have either the capacity or capability or resourcing to embark on what we call as digital transformation journeys and reach out to their communities in their geographies to actually provide quicker, faster, better services, irrespective of which demographic you are from. And that is the original genesis. And of late, we have seen a lot of interest coming in for those who want to look Apex and Apex community members and ecosystem partners, fintechs, as investment opportunities. So we are running currently AMTD Investment Fund, which is a $50 million fund, of which we have, I think, allocated about $12 million a couple of weeks back to 6 fintech partners. What we also run parallelly, which was a brainchild, a necessity out of COVID, is what we call as the Hackolysium, which is the hackathon platform, where we concluded the FAW hackathon last week. And this was essentially a realization that during COVID, the most essential part for a fintech is to be able to travel from A place to B place to showcase their goods and services. And they would not be able to do that, hence no business. So we brought business into Apex so that the community can come and interact. And that's the reason why over the last 6 months, we've been able to create an ecosystem of close to about 2,000 plus fintechs and about 6 very large scale hackathons having completed, including Bank of New York Mellon, G20 Tech Sprint with BIS, UNCDF, MAS, and FAW, and so on and so forth. So all this together is Apex. Sorry, I would have consumed a little bit of time to do that.
No, excellent. Thanks for the very detailed explanation. It sort of provides the full picture and what it consists of, including the community. Thanks for sharing, Manish. We have a question from Breakout participants around how to make the best and leverage the most of partnerships when it comes to fintechs and the female economy. I know we heard a little bit about win-win and that sort of thing. And the question goes, is it in terms of data? Is it reputation? Is it financing? Where do the partnerships really create the most value, and how do you make the best of them? Ajaita, could you share a perspective? And then anyone else on the panel who feels. they can share on that.
Yeah, sure. So I definitely think, so unfortunately, reputation, as much as I love it, it doesn't fly, right? We know that, but we can translate these three terms differently. So reputation, we've translated to network effect, right? So how many people does one individual women SME cater to, given her community connect? And so through the Self-Help Group initiative, we know that earlier, women were maybe only covering, let's say, 10 to 20 people that were near them, but now they're covering almost 10x to 20x that. So that becomes their circular network effect that they can cross-sell to, and that reputation, to prove reputation, we've been tracking data around how much she's not been able to just sell to her customers, but also able to, the deepness of the data that she's able to get that others cannot. So for example, when a market research company tries to take data, it's very quantitative. You're getting very interesting qualitative data, and we all know that financial data is very difficult to get when you're a third party. But when you're actually using these women, you're able to go deeper with getting more insights. And that's one factor for reputation, plus data. The second also on reputation is whether she's able to cross-sell, upsell, resell to the same customer and also get new customers at a lower cost. Again, it's linked to reputation because you're being able to like link that to trust. And then the third, of course, is in terms of her capital rotation. So one of the things that we've seen is that when you invest in women's technology inclusion and skilling, they're actually able to do customer conversions at a 50% higher rate than a male counterpart. Now, how do you track that? Again, using e-commerce platforms and using fintech platforms, we have the data there. We just need to be able to use it with using things like frequency, turnaround time, and also looking at it on a deeper level, on a daily, weekly perspective, going granular, and then analyzing it to translate it in a way that allows our financial partners to understand it. So those are some key ways that we've been able to harness that, and it's worked. We've been able to show 33% better performance of women SMEs than their male counterparts on various different product categories that otherwise big companies have not been able to achieve. And it's been helpful in helping them get access to finance because of it.
Very interesting stat there in terms of the ability of like female entrepreneurs to have higher conversion rates. We had a similar study here in Nigeria where we found that female users of digital services, majority of them were referred by women, right? So just the role of women sort of building that ecosystem. Very interesting. Steve, I'd love to come back to you just on maybe a slight tilt to that question, but in terms of the innovations that you've seen addressing sort of like women, right? And specifically, since you operate across multiple countries, we'd love to get your sense of, are there variations when we speak about the women market, right? Have you seen different uptakes for the same type of product in different markets? Are there nuances that, that people should take into account?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we talk about innovation, we immediately think about technology. And I actually believe that technology is really just a small part of what we're doing when we're lending to women. Awareness, behavior change, education, digital literacy, financial literacy, I think actually become more important than the technology itself. So aside from those programs that we run and most people should run because I think it's ethical, the other side of it is yes, having custom products for specifically for women that are appealing to women, that they can understand well. I mean, again, we're in the infancy of lending to women-owned SMEs, so it really needs to be customized products. It can't be mainstream. It needs to be easily understood. And really, I think the terms and conditions and the legal work really need to be communicated and educated. I think it's dangerous if we don't lend with an education component.
Got it. So the importance of beyond technology is really just an enabler. It's around all the other elements that bring it together. All right. I guess maybe one more question, and I'm going to address to each member of the panel as we wrap up here. And the question is, you've spoken so much about what it takes to really partner, how it takes to sort of build these different relationships in serving the female economy. If you had a magic wand and you had one wish to mobilize stakeholders in serving the female economy, what would be your one wish? What would be the one thing you'd want to happen to mobilize folks to serve the female economy? And maybe while you think about that, I would really love, there's just one more question that came through, so maybe we'll treat that, but we'll come to that. That would be your closing statements. There's a question from the participants around, should the female market be treated as a niche market or actually be included in the existing with few modifications when it comes to fintechs? How should a fintech look at the female market? Niche or just as part of the overall sort of product portfolio?
I'm going to cover both quickly. So yes. Okay. So on the first, I don't think it needs to be treated as a niche market. I think that we've just been looking at it that way, unfortunately. I think it's very few tweaks and just looking at data slightly differently. But I think that the loan sizes, the expectations, the uses, the credibility, the compliance, the structure, all of that, I think is actually the same. So we don't have to go, crazy niche. And I think the fear is if you do look at it as a niche market, then we're again going to say that it's hard to meet that customer market. So I want to make sure that we absolutely never call it niche, but just tweaked and customized. And then I think in terms of a magic wand, so, in India, so we just made a commitment, right, to create 1 million women entrepreneurs serving 100 million rural women, leveraging the SAG initiative, which means that government, National Rural Livelihood Mission, grassroots organizations, financial institutions, and us kind of come together to do this at scale. So the magic wand, that the one magic touch that I need is literally to get everyone in the same room, or these days on a video chat for like a couple of hours, to listen to each other's pain points quickly, to then be able to kind of truly understand shared value. Ideally, all of us are doing something different in that supply chain to create efficiencies to then deliver the solutions. The infrastructure is there, the interest is there, the alignment is there. Whether this is a good opportunity or not is also there. It's a matter of just stepping in, going, I can do X, Y, Z, and each person does something different on that value chain, and we can make this a success.
I love it. I love it. Steve, what would be your one wish?
My one wish would be that that there's risk mitigation. I mean, ultimately it comes down to risk and the appetites for the financial institutions. And so be it loan guarantees, insurance, whatever it may be, we need to have better products so that the banks at least feel comfortable lending to new segments and sectors. And over time, obviously, we won't need those so much, but they're so risk adverse, it's annoying. So hopefully something like that with my magic wand, I can change.
So risk orientation, got it. Manish, what's your one wish?
I think it would be coming together of all stakeholders in a manner which is not meant only for presentations and decks, right? And it has to go beyond Zoom calls or meetings in fancy meeting rooms, because the reality is that life is changing. If I take Vietnam as an example, I was there for about 2.5 years before I came to Singapore. 65 million plus Facebook users on mobile individual, and only about 15 to 18 million digital bank users. And that's the reality. That's the bridge that we should be able to break. And that can only happen if all stakeholders concerning digital, whether it is the government or the regulator or the banks or the fintechs, need to be on the same side of things and say that, okay, this is the customer, let's try and help him out. So we need to break that cycle of I need to fix things for myself only.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you all so much. I think it's been quite an engaging session. The key takeaways that I've heard, amongst others, it really is about partnerships. Think about the anchor partner in your market. It might be a development bank, it might be private capital, but think about that partner you need to get in and crowd in others. And then think about how to create win-win solutions, and then leverage technology to achieve it. Not technology as the focus, but more as an enabler. And I think on the one wand, I think, I sort of heard Manish and Ajay sort of coalesce against a common theme around bring the stakeholders together. Let's look rapid fire. What are the pain points, and see how we can all key in to a common agenda. And I guess for Steve, give everyone in the banks sort of a mind transplant that makes them a bit more, open to different types of risk in this environment. Thank you everyone for making time, and we hope you found the discussion useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.